couple of weeks ago now, David Cameron came out and said Muslim women should learn English. Now, I think when people come to Britain, it's great that we should provide the services and give everyone the opportunity to learn English. It showed an amazing lack of self-awareness from David Cameron, whose government in 2011 slashed the funding for English language services for migrants. And now he's blaming the people he took away the resources that would have allowed them to do it, to actually do it. But also it's really damaging and dangerous for David Cameron to single out Muslim women. I was listening to a talkback radio station in London that morning, and someone rang up and said, why is David Cameron picking on Muslims? I'm a nurse in a doctor's surgery, and we've got lots of people from China who haven't learned English. Why didn't he pick on them?
Issues in Syria, that's another big
okay, yeah, of course. Well, two sides of this: refugees and war. Yeah. Starting on the war side, we're opposed to the bombing of Syria. You might know we were opposed to both the Afghan and Iraq wars. We were opposed to the bombing of Libya. It's an approach that's failed again and again. It has killed lots of people, and the idea that we can be the 12th military coming into Syria and bombing Syria and somehow that's going to make a difference. I mean, it's a nonsense. What we should be doing is focusing diplomatic efforts very much, and Britain has a history of diplomacy, and focus on, I mean, it's become a proxy war now, with Turkey, Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, they're all fueling money and resources and encouraging the fighting. So the first place to start...
It's been engineered in some way.
Yeah. I mean, so the first place to start is to, not bomb ourselves, get out of there militarily, and then say, put all the pressure on all those countries to say, there's no easy or obvious route forward, but stopping putting money and arms in there would be a good starting point. And then, I mean, in terms of the refugees, you may know that we said Britain should not just take, but welcome its fair share of the refugees from Syria, but also from, Afghanistan, Iraq, other places where we particularly have a special responsibility because we helped create those situations in the first place. So, I mean, the government says 20,000 over the term of this parliament. We've suggested that a more appropriate figure would be something like 240,000. If you think that perhaps 2 million people, we've had 1 million people coming to Europe this year, if you think, in the foreseeable future, say that's 2 million, then Britain's 12% of the European population, so we should take 12% of those 2 million, which is 240,000. And, it sounds like a big number, but that's one refugee for every 266 Britons, which is, when you think about this as a global humanitarian crisis, this is something we should be doing. And Britain has a real, tradition of refuge, of providing people with refuge.
And what about Islamophobia, obviously, because of this negative press on Islam?
Yes.
It is having a lot of effect.
I think considering into freedom of speech as well, I think.
Well, I think we've spoken out against the Prevent programme. It's a demonisation of communities. It's a not working with communities to say, are there issues, are there problems here? And I think I've seen some really good academic research that says, the government has been tending to focus on, Muslim institutions, Muslim students, but often it's actually, individuals who've had, fairly messy lives who end up being attracted to, it seems very strange, but the kind of somehow glamour and excitement of ISIS. And actually, the focus on stigmatising communities, stigmatising people. I mean, Caroline Russell, the Green councillor in Islington, did a lot of work. That was, I think, a 12-year-old boy who used the word ecotourism in a French class, in the way we all know in a language class, you just fling out whatever word you might know. And he ended up being questioned by the police, which is what the government's doing to prevent. Is really, I think, doing real damage. And I know lots of universities, people are really concerned about that.
So more Muslims would feel more isolated because you're bringing in so many of these small points. So, but it does.
And I think there's sort of been a sense of extremism and non-violent extremism. What does non-violent extremism mean? It's a very slippery phrase. And a lot of the kind of things that we've seen, some of the spying and the repression that's gone on. You hear police talk about people like who are taking action against coal-fired power stations get grouped in with ISIS. You know, it's something that the broader green movement is also suffering. There's a whole issue at the moment. The government's running what's known as the Prevent scheme, and that's a scheme that really is demonising communities, focusing on individual communities, not supporting them and supporting vulnerable people, but actually picking them out and discriminating against them. You know, what we've seen is a real kind of situation where we've seen some really discriminatory statements made at the centre. We've seen in Prevent there's a lot of talk of non-violent extremism, whatever that means. You know, what we're doing now is a real problem, and it's something we need to tackle.
Islamic school registration program, which your Tories are running. I don't know what your views are on that.
I mean, I think basically the rules should be the same for every school, obviously, or educational institution. Obviously, you know, you want rules about the CIB checks for, you know, protecting children. I mean, that's, you know, so basically it should be the rules are the same for every institution, whatever, you know, whether it's a Steiner school for you know, eco things, or a Muslim school, or a Christian school, or a after school club, for whatever. Basically the rules should be the same right across for everybody. There shouldn't be special rules.
Yes, because there's a lot of community here based in Worcester, especially, and UK as well. There's a lot of from Kashmir, and you know, obviously I'm from Kashmir as well. I migrated from there in 1987, and you know, my family is there, and we've got big concern over the violation of human rights in Kashmir by Indian forces, and you know, obviously we want something to be done in British Parliament to prevent this, or at least
speak out and
and
put pressure on.
Put the pressure on as well. And plus, I think main concern is at the moment is there's no aid. We can't send any aid to the Kashmir,
right?
Which is, you know, a lot of our relatives are suffering there, and obviously we can't do much.
I mean, I think there's a real principle underlying here, which is, you know, where our foreign policy should start is human rights and democracy, and self-determination of people being able to decide their own government, their own future, their own way things are arranged. Speaking out on that, and you know, the principle should be we defend human rights and democracy around the world. And one of the things that I'm trying to spread around is the idea that, you know, rather than just talking about defence policy, you might know we're opposed to Trident nuclear weapons, and you know, spending money on weapons, spend money on diplomacy, defending human rights, and think about security policy. What makes us all more secure in the world is a more stable, democratic world in which human rights are respected everywhere, and you're also thinking about food and tackling climate change and all those other things. So, you know, take that money from Trident, say, and spend it in defending human rights and democracy and helping people with aid. Makes us much safer.
Is it for the British government of their own interest, or actually it's broader than that? Because we have seen all the European nations and Britain as well, that they were in the favor of toppling the Egyptian government, which was elected by the people, and that called democracy. But in a sense, what we assume, in the Middle East, Britain and the European nations, they want to install their own choice of people. Is that democracy? It's a one rule for the one country and the another rule for the others.
Yeah, and that, you know, is something we've done again and again. If you go back historically, Saddam Hussein was our friend and ally. You know, the Shah of Iran was our friend and ally. Colonel Gaddafi was our friend and ally. Yeah, you know, it's something that we've just done, and ultimately it always ends up, you know, it's not only the wrong thing to do morally in terms of human rights and respecting people's self-determination, it's also, you know, it also works out badly globally for all of us as well. Political campaigns, and I still run into particularly Tory MPs who just know nothing about this, and if you can find a case in their own constituency, you know, and point it to them. So I think it's possible, even under this government, to kind of nibble away at the edges. And the Children's Commissioner, you might know, came out with a really excellent report highlighting the way how this was actually, you know, was destroying the rights of children to live with their own family. So it might.
It's just not our community, obviously. It's
Yeah,
a lot
no.
of other
Well,
communities.
well, I mean, one of the most fascinating ones I saw was a guy who, but he was like, you know, I'm the son of a Dunkirk veteran, and you know, I can't live with my Ghanaian wife in my own country, and so it does go across all communities, and that's, I think, one of the things is to try and join up campaigns to make sure that people from all kinds of different backgrounds see that, and you know, we see occasionally, often makes newspapers, there's an American affected. How can it be an American?
A white person, yeah.